Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm here with a short story which is written by Victor Canning, A Matter of Time. The story deals with crime, it deals with greed, which leads you to your own downfall. It leads you to the themes of how your desire and temptation to procure more and more leads you to your own ruin, leads you to your own downfall. So before I begin with the story, I want all of you to learn some terms which are used while we are reading a crime story. Okay? So first is Conman. It is Conman. I've written all these words in the description box. You can have a look there. So conman, a person who is good at tricking people out of their hard-earned money. They are very good at bringing out money from people by tricking them, by fooling them. Then a fast talker, a person who is good at manipulating you to do what they want, influencing you. Then a charmer, a person who is good at making other people like them and trust them. There's a charmer in this story as well. Then impostor, a person who is dishonestly pretending to be someone else. Like he imposed himself to be the president of India. That means he was pretending. You must have heard about the word disguised, right? So you are pretending to be someone else. You are hiding your own identity. Then fake, something which is made to look like something real. That is fake. Something which is not real, but you're trying to make it look real. Those are fake notes. The person you was using fake notes to purchase the car. That's a crime. That's illegal, right? Then there is one word, smuggling. The main theme on which the whole story is written, the main plot revolves around smuggling of watches. Smuggling is when you are illegally bringing in or importing things or goods into your city or your country. That is smuggling. So to give you a brief description of what is the theme, the short story reflects how greed may lead you to your own downfall, ruin you. The events in the story, they trace the sequence of events as to how the person in the story gets caught by the authorities for an illegal importing, which is smuggling of watches, which leads to his downfall. He loses his career, he loses his job. There are three characters in the story: Chris Selby, the customs officer, and the narrator. Custom is the tax which is levied by the government, that means which is put up by the government on the goods which you are importing from the other countries. जब आप कोई भी goods, कोई भी सामान जब आप दूसरी country से मंगाते हो, ठीक है, the government puts taxes on it. Okay, you have to pay a charge to the government for bringing in goods from the other country. That is custom, that is a tax. So there are people who check whether the goods which you are bringing in are legal or not. That is customs. So Chris Selby, there is a custom officer and the narrator. Okay. So the two characters who are there, Chris Selby and the customs officer, they wanted more than what they had. They were greedy. And they were charmed by profits, more and more money, and how they lead themselves to their own downfall, how they craft their own end is narrated in the story. Alright? So the genre in which the story is written is of crime and punishment. You will have consequences if you indulge yourself into illegal activities. Okay? Let's read through the story. Okay. So do you like narrating stories? Yes, everybody likes to tell stories. Each one of us have stories to tell. And who are the good storytellers? Who brings a story to life? Who makes the story vivid? If somebody is narrating a story to you, and if you feel that you are a part of that story, that means that person is a good storyteller and can keep you interested. Hooked means interested till the very end. So here is one such story which is narrated by a good storyteller about an occasional, that means sometimes, occasional smuggler of watches. That person used to smuggle watches occasionally, that means once or twice a year. Alright, let's read. You could tell it was coming. The touch, the hard luck story. My own cup was full. and his empty. My own suit reasonably respectable and his unreasonably shabby. So I was sorry for him. He leaned across the table. From his waistcoat pocket, he pulled a watch and laid it between us. He was a good, it was a good watch, silver with finely wrought gold hands. So, in the picture, as you can see, there are lots of people sitting in this cafe, having tea, enjoying themselves. This is a shabby place. As you can see, the floor is not clean, it's quite dirty. So there is this man who is going to be the narrator of this chapter, and then there is this old man who is wearing these shabby clothes. Okay, he is the storyteller and he is the person who is talking to us. Okay, the well-suited one. So you could tell it was coming. This person who is wearing this formal suit, he says you could tell it was coming. That means you could already predict something was coming. The touch, the hard luck story, the expressions, and the hard luck story. My own cup was full and his empty. He gives you the details. He says my cup was full, his was empty. I was wearing reasonably good clothes and he was wearing shabby, untidy clothes, and I was sorry for him. That means I felt sympathetic towards him. He leaned across the table, he bent towards the table, and from his waistcoat pocket, this is the waistcoat which he's wearing, the brown one, he pulled out, that means he brought out a watch and puts it on the table between us. It was a good watch, silver, that means it was made up of silver, it was silver colored, with finely wrought gold hands. The hands of the watch were made up of gold. It must be expensive, right? It's yours for a couple of quid. Nothing wrong with it, and honestly come by. Who says this line? This old man who is sitting here across the table, on the other side of the table. He says, it's yours for a couple of quid. Quid is, as you can see in your book, the meaning is given, it's British pound. It's yours for a couple of quid. He says, for 2 quids, you can buy the watch from me, and nothing wrong with it, and honestly come by. He says, don't think that I have stolen this from somewhere, because he looked poor, he looked shabby. He wasn't looking like a person who would have such an expensive watch. So he says, nothing wrong with it, and honestly come by. That means I've honestly got it, and I'm selling you this as a honest seller. I've not stolen this from anywhere. You could tell he was an old hand at the game. That means he was an experienced man by the way he ignored the preliminaries and came to the heart of the problem. He says you could already tell that he was an experienced person in dealing with watches because he ignored all the preliminaries. That means he ignored all the introductory details which you often say at the beginning of an activity, like you introduce yourself or you introduce why you are selling the watch. He did not say anything of that sort. He just directly came to the heart of the problem. That means to the main cause of the problem. His voice too had that half belligerent quality of people who never get used to being on the wrong end of charity. Then he says that his voice, when he spoke, it was very much visible that he did not like to be on the wrong end of charity. Please understand this. Charity has 2 ends. The person who is doing the charity and the person who is receiving it. So he did not like to be on the receiving end. He did not like to be dependent upon others. His voice had that irritation. His voice had that anger. If somebody looked at him with sympathetic eyes, he did not like it. I don't want it, I said. And the person here, he says, this person who is well suited, he says, I don't want it. So he wasn't interested in it. But because a man's money is his own and he's entitled to be a fool with it at times, I passed him a 10 bob note. He says, because a man's money is his own, because you own your money and sometimes you tend to waste it. You tend to spend it on things which you don't even want. So I passed him a 10 bob note. That means I passed him a 10 rupee note, a 10 rupee coin, which you can say now. Then I ordered a sandwich and a cup of coffee for him because he had his cup empty, so I ordered a sandwich and a cup of coffee for him. I would rather you bought the word square, he said as he bit into his sandwich. So as he takes the first bite of his sandwich, he says, I would rather, that means I would prefer you to buy this watch square. That means the watch honestly and in a fair manner, buy it from me. And then he added, I hate the sight of watches, they started it all. And then he adds a preliminary detail to the story, as if he is giving you a prelude, as if he is giving you the beginning of the story he is going to narrate, to make the other person interested in his story. He says, I hate the sight of watches, I don't want to look at watches, they started it all. That means all of which I suffered, my suffering started with these watches. So if anybody says that I hate looking at these things because these are the things which brought me ruins, these are the things which gave me losses, so you would be curious to know what must have happened, right? So the other person, the narrator, was also very interested, and he had me. He says in the next line, he tells the readers that he had me. That means all my attention was now towards what this old man was going to say. I had half an hour before an appointment and it was raining outside. That means he says that I had half an hour before an appointment, and since it was raining outside, I could not go anywhere. And then the old man starts speaking here. Chris Selby was his name. The old man began. He was a London theatrical agent, handled quite a few head of the bill names, and was doing very well for himself. But he could never resist the temptation to do a little better. So he introduces the first character in his story, and he says Chris Selby was his name. He was a London theatrical agent. That means he used to handle the people who used to work in theatre. He used to handle them, and he used to handle quite a few big actors, head of the bill names, that means main performers of the show. And he was doing very well for himself. He was earning good money. But he could never stop the desire. He could never resist the temptation to do a little better. He could never resist and stop himself to get the opportunity of earning more money. He always wanted to earn more. I hope you've understood till here. So at the end of the page, I want all of you to ask yourself these questions. I hope you will be able to answer these. What was the old man selling? Was the narrator interested in buying it? All these questions I will be mentioning in the description box page wise, so that you are able to observe whether you've understood the page or not. What did the narrator give him instead? And then last one, who was Chris Selby? I hope you'll be able to answer all these questions. Okay, I hope you've understood this much, the introduction and the explanation of this page. If you have any doubt, you may ask in the class or you may ask in the comment box. Alright, I'll continue in the next video lesson.